Are you ready to dive into some serious productivity hacks today? Because we are going deep, deep into your notes, the ones you sent in about boosting office efficiency. And let me tell you, you guys had some seriously genius ideas in there.
It's amazing how much we can all learn from each other's experiences,
Yeah.
right? Because we've all been there. That feeling of drowning in emails, stuck in meetings that could have been a quick email chain, just kind of spinning our wheels instead of actually, moving forward.
Oh, tell me about it. Sometimes it feels like my to-do list is multiplying faster than I can check things off. So how do we break free from that cycle?
Well, your first point really jumped out at me. Improving timelines and reducing bottlenecks. It's like finding the express lane to productivity, which I am all about. It's so true. And that's where the first strategy you highlighted comes in, process mapping. Have you ever been stuck in traffic, like really backed up traffic, and then you finally get to the front of the line and it turns out there's like an accident or
Oh,
construction or just one toll booth open for some
yeah.
reason?
The worst. To talk about a productivity killer, I mean, talk about a time suck.
Exactly. That's a bottleneck. And those bottlenecks can pop up in our workflows just like they do on the highway.
And the worst part is, sometimes we don't even realize those bottlenecks exist until we're already stuck in the middle of them. It's like, why is this project taking so long?
Right. But that's where process mapping comes in. By visualizing each step in our workflow, and I mean every single step, we can pinpoint those hidden bottlenecks before they become major roadblocks.
Okay, I love that. It's like having X-ray vision for your workflow, right? You can see where things are slowing down and find ways to smooth out the process. Like, remember that time we were trying to launch that new feature and it took like 2 weeks longer than it should have because we didn't realize we needed sign off from 3 different
Oh,
departments?
I definitely remember that. And it probably could have been avoided with a little process mapping up front.
Exactly. It's all about being proactive and anticipating those potential roadblocks. So once we've mapped out our processes and identified those sneaky bottlenecks, what's the next step?
Well, once we know where the work is getting stuck, we have to figure out how to prioritize all those tasks we're constantly juggling. Because even without those bottlenecks, most of us still have a mountain of to-dos every single day.
Ugh, don't remind me. My to-do list is basically a living, breathing creature at this point. It just keeps growing.
I hear you. And trying to tackle everything at once is a recipe for overwhelm and burnout. That's where a system like the Eisenhower matrix can be a game changer.
Okay, I've heard of the Eisenhower matrix, but to be honest, it always sounded a little intimidating. Like, am I really going to sit down and categorize every single task I have?
I promise it's simpler than it sounds. Imagine dividing your tasks into 4 quadrants. Okay, so you got urgent, important. Those are the things that absolutely positively have to get done today. Think
Mm-hmm.
deadlines, client emergencies, putting out fires.
Okay, got it. Those are the non-negotiables. But what about the tasks that are important but not necessarily urgent? Like those long-term projects that always seem to get pushed to the back burner because, something urgent always comes up.
Those are your important but not urgent tasks. And these are actually the ones that can really move the needle in terms of our goals and making real progress. The key is to treat them with the same level of importance as your urgent tasks, even if it's just blocking out, say, an hour in your calendar to focus on them without distractions.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But I have to admit, I'm a very visual person.
Yeah.
Is there a way to actually see these tasks in quadrants, or am I stuck with spreadsheets and lists? Because I am a visual learner for sure.
Oh, I'm with you, visual all the way. And luckily, there are tons of tools and techniques for visualizing your workflow. You
Yeah.
mentioned Kanban boards earlier, right?
Yeah, I love Kanban board.
Well, those were a fantastic example. Think about it like having a big whiteboard or even a digital board where you can create columns for each stage of a project. And then you use sticky notes or digital cards to represent your tasks. So as you make progress on a task, you move it along the board from to do to in progress to done.
Okay, so satisfying. I don't know about you, but there's just something so satisfying about physically moving that task over to the done column. It's like a visual representation of your progress, which can be incredibly motivating.
Right. And it's not just about personal satisfaction. Visualizing your workflow like this can also improve communication and transparency within a team because everyone knows what stage a project is in, who's responsible for what.
And who to bug when something's stalled? I'm kidding, kind of. But seriously, it keeps everyone accountable and on the same page. So we talked about process mapping and task prioritization, two super powerful tools for improving timelines and reducing those productivity-sucking bottlenecks. But there's another layer to this, right? Even if we're individually crushing it, we still need to make sure everyone's working together seamlessly. Which brings us to the next key takeaway from your notes. cross-departmental coordination.
Oh, cross-departmental coordination. Now, that's the dream, right? Getting everyone on the same page, working in perfect harmony. But in reality, it can feel more like we're playing a never-ending game of phone tag. You know what I mean? Like, where's that crucial piece of information hiding? Is it in my inbox? Did someone scribble it on a sticky note and put it on my desk while I was away? Did I imagine the whole thing?
Oh, I've been there. It's so frustrating, and it really highlights why this idea of cross-departmental coordination is so crucial for productivity. Because when teams aren't communicating effectively, it creates all kinds of chaos, right? I mean, you get delays, misunderstandings. Projects can totally go sideways.
Oh, tell me about it. I once saw a project almost get derailed because two teams were working off different versions of a document. Can you even imagine? It was like something out of a comedy show, but the fallout was definitely not so funny.
Ouch. Yeah, that's a nightmare scenario. And it's totally avoidable when you have the right tools for real-time communication. You actually mentioned a couple of great ones in your notes, Slack and Trello. I mean, those are lifesavers for team communication.
Absolutely love those tools. It's like having a virtual water cooler where you can just check in, ask a quick question, get updates, and avoid those endless email chains that seem to multiply by the minute.
Right. Who hasn't been sucked into one of those never-ending email threads? And the beauty of platforms like Slack or Trello is that they're more than just instant messaging, right?
Yeah.
You've got file sharing, task management, even video conferencing all in one place. So it's not just about cutting down on emails. It's about having that single source of truth for all your project-related information.
So instead of digging through your inbox for that one crucial email from 3 weeks ago, you know exactly where to look. Love it. Okay, so we're talking about streamlining communication, making information easily accessible. It's all about cutting through the clutter, which actually brings us to your next brilliant point. Reducing waste.
Yes. And this is where we kind of zoom out a little, look at the bigger picture of how we're using our resources, not just time, but materials, energy, digital storage space.
Right, so we're not just talking about remembering to turn off the lights when we leave the room, although we should all be doing that. This is about a more holistic approach to resource management. But where do we even start?
Well, a great starting point is something called a time audit. And I know it sounds kind of official and maybe a little intimidating, but it's really not. It's basically just about tracking how you spend your time throughout the workday. Think of it like a detective, right? You're gathering clues to figure out where your time is actually going.
Okay, so like, am I getting sucked into unproductive meetings? Is email eating up way more time than it should?
Right.
Am I spending an hour a day searching for lost files on my computer?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those are all prime suspects in the case of the missing time. And once you identify those time wasters, then you can start implementing strategies to reclaim those precious minutes. I actually did a time audit a while back, and I was kind of shocked to discover I was spending a big chunk of my day on things that weren't really moving my work forward.
Right. It can be eye-opening for sure. We think we're being productive, but sometimes those little time sucks really add up without us even realizing it.
Totally. But the good news is that even small changes can make a big difference. Maybe it's blocking out specific times in your calendar for email or using that Pomodoro technique you hear so much about to really focus on a task.
I'm all about the Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes of focused work, then a 5-minute break. It's like a little reward system for your brain. Okay, so we're reclaiming our individual time, but reducing waste also means thinking about how we're using resources as a team, right? And I'm not just talking about those communal snacks that seem to disappear in 5 minutes flat.
Definitely. And one thing that comes to mind, that mountain of paper we used to go through.
Oh my gosh, the paper. Remember when printers were basically magic machines that never stopped spitting out paper?
And half of it ended up in the recycling bin.
Yeah.
It's funny now, but it's a perfect example of resource waste. And, we tend to focus on time management, but this resource waste idea extends to so many other areas.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about electricity consumption. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Are we leaving lights on in empty rooms? Are our computers going into hibernation mode when you're not using them? And then there's the digital storage space. I swear, my computer desktop is like a black hole for random files and folders. Going paperless is something I am 100% on board with. Not only is it, good for the planet, but it also really forces you to be organized. Because let me tell you, nothing sucks up time like searching for a lost file in a mountain of paperwork. I've been there.
Oh, 100%. And, when information is digital and centralized, it's easier to share, easier to collaborate on. Which kind of brings us to that final key takeaway from your notes about cost management and decision making.
Okay, yes. This is where things get really interesting, right? Because we've talked about streamlining processes, we've talked about optimizing our time, we've talked about reducing waste. But how do we actually know if all these efforts are paying off? How do we measure success?
Data. Data is the answer. We're talking about using data to make smart decisions, track our progress, basically leveraging the power of data-driven decisions. And I know that might sound a little intimidating, but
It does sound a little official, right? I like
Mhm.
data-driven decisions. I mean, spreadsheets and I are not exactly best friends. I'm more of a visual person, to be honest. Does this mean I need to go get a degree in data science or something?
Not at all. It's really not about becoming a data scientist. It's just about using the information you already have to, get a clearer picture of what's working and what's not.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. Because I'm all about working smarter, not harder, as you always say.
Always. So, for example, you mentioned cost analysis and budgeting in your notes, right? Imagine if you had like this crystal clear view of your budget at all times. Like you could track your expenses, compare what you're actually spending to your projections, generate reports in a snap. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Okay, that does sound a lot better than my current system of shoeboxes and receipts. No more last-minute panic attacks trying to figure out where the budget went. But what about, like, measuring productivity and efficiency? Those seem a little trickier to quantify.
That's where those key performance indicators come in. Those KPIs everyone's always talking about. Think of them like signposts to let you know if you're heading in the right direction.
Okay, so if our goal is, say, to improve project turnaround time, what would be a good KPI?
Perfect example. A good KPI for that might be the average number of days it takes to complete a project. You track that KPI over time, and boom, you can see if all those changes you're making are actually having a positive impact.
It's like having a feedback loop for your workflow, right?
Yeah,
You make a change, you see how it affects those KPIs, and then you can make adjustments from there.
exactly. You get it.
Yeah.
And the best part is you don't have to be a data whiz to make sense of it all. There are so many fantastic tools out there like Power BI and Tableau that can pull all that data together, create these amazing visuals and dashboards.
Okay, so we're talking about those cool interactive charts and graphs that make data actually kind of fun to look at. Because let's face it, nobody wants to stare at a spreadsheet for hours. I know I don't.
Exactly. A picture is worth 1,000 data points, right?
Mm.
It helps you spot those patterns and trends that you might miss if you were just looking at raw numbers.
This has been amazing. We've covered so much ground today, from like mapping out our workflows to, harnessing the power of data. I feel so empowered to conquer my office chaos and just like really level up my productivity game.
Yes, that's what we want to hear. And remember, it's not about doing everything at once. Start small. Maybe it's tackling that one bottleneck that's been driving you crazy. Maybe it's trying out the Pomodoro technique or, finally going paperless.
Small changes, big impact. I love it.
Yeah.
And as you're implementing these strategies, don't forget to celebrate those wins, big and small. Share your success stories with us online. Let's keep this productivity party going. Until next time, stay focused, stay organized, and most importantly, stay productive.